So you just bought a brand new PC and you have zero experience on how to build one. This video will teach you exactly step by step on how to build a PC with zero experience and install things such as drivers, and I'll probably do a quick tutorial on how to do so later in this video, and I'll add a timestamp here on how to do so. And before you even buy the PC, first thing you want to do, and this is the most common mistake everyone makes, is buying the wrong parts. You might buy a motherboard that doesn't fit in your case. You might buy a motherboard that's not compatible with your chip. So make sure you go on to buildmypc.com or any other website that tells you whether things are compatible. That's the best thing you want to do before you even buy anything. Otherwise, you're going to be returning a lot of things. That's one of the mistakes I made. You should probably avoid that. You might be asking yourself, what are the main components of a PC? The main components of a PC, well, you're going to need your motherboard, your chip, how are you going to cool the CPU, your storage, memory, your power supply, your GPU. You might not want the stock case fan, so you might want to buy some aftermarket fans, and your case. So that's main components, but you also need your accessories, which your accessories include of your mouse, your keyboard, your headset or speakers, monitors, your HDMI cables, and maybe other accessories that you might want, like a mic or camera. If you want those stuff, I'll probably add a different video, but just for the PC, these are the main things that you need. Before you start this build, you're gonna need a couple things. You're gonna need a screwdriver kit, preferably something that has multiple sizes. Another thing you're gonna need is a USB flash drive, has at least over 8 gigabytes of space, and you're gonna need access to another computer. This is to install your Windows software or whatever software you decided to go with, and to install your other drivers such as your Wi-Fi drivers, because whenever you load this PC, you're gonna have no internet connection. At least you might run into that problem, which is what I did. And some motivation. So the first things you want to install before you start putting stuff in your case is you're going to need your motherboard, you're going to need your CPU, your memory, and your storage, which is, you know, I prefer SSD drives. I also bought an HDD drive, but you might have to install that later because there's some settings that get all janky. And you might have watched many videos and you might think that the CPU is probably the most important thing of the PC, but it's also probably one of the easiest things to install. You just want to get this right. Make sure that your CPU chip aligns with this little triangle here in the corner with your motherboard. Your motherboard should also have that little triangle right here. It should look like this. Once you do that, place the chip into your motherboard and make sure this aligns seamlessly. Once you've done that, you want to pull down this lever and this little plastic should pop out. And that's really it. The CPU is probably, like I said, one of the easiest things to install. So the next easiest thing to do is also installing the storage. For my motherboard, I made it very easy. There's a simple button on the side that you press and it pops out. For you, you might have some screws that you might have to screw out. So take that off. My motherboard came with some pre-packed thermal paste. I'm pretty sure most motherboards already have that too. So you're gonna want to take out that clear plastic so that it makes contact with the SSD drive. Once you do that, make sure to place the SSD at a 30-degree angle into the socket and push it down slowly, and make sure it matches with that little screw. That little screw should have a little thing you spin so it lays on top of the SSD and it just stays in place. You might also want to screw it in so it's a little more tight. Same thing on the top, there should be some thermal paste on there, so take off that clear plastic, then just pop it back in. It's simple as that. The next thing you want to do is install your RAM. I went ahead and bought some Corsair DDR5 RAM, 64 gigabytes. This is also one of the easiest parts to install. It's as simple as popping these little tabs right here. You pop the RAM drive back in that socket. So I actually placed it in the wrong place. You're gonna want to place it on the second and last place. So like I said, I went with some custom fans. If you want to stick to your regular case fan, just skip to this part right here after I'm done installing these special fans. However, if you do want to install aftermarket fans, I recommend these called Be Quiet fans. It's in the name. So they're actually really good. They're very quiet. I tested these at full speed. You couldn't hear nothing. I'll play a clip right now. Yes, that's the audio. You can't hear nothing, right? That's why I went ahead and installed these. So the first thing you want to do is take the back one out or the front ones. They're very easy. It's just literally held by 4 screws. The front might be a little complicated. You might want to pop out these filter caps. Pop those out. It will give you access to the screws. Take them out. Same thing as the back one. It's just 4 screws. Make sure once you take out the stock ones, make sure you follow those cables like where they came in from, so you can put your aftermarket through there and have them going through the back. Once you're done with that, just pop everything back in and it should look like this. quiet, right? Also, you're gonna have a lot of little tie wires from all this new PC parts you bought, and make sure you wrap around the pairs because you want to make sure that the fan and the RGB stuff lines up properly. It'll make your life a lot easier. But these fans have a little hub. Also, my case came with these little pop-off brackets, so it was a lot easier to install these hubs. This is your RGB cable. This RGB cable you want to connect underneath your hub, and next to that hub should also be a SATA power port. Each one of these fans come with a USB cable and an RGB cable. So these hubs make it easier because all you do is connect those USB cables into the LED ports in this hub. This hub already comes with RGB and a power cable at the bottom, so all you have to do is connect it to the power SATA cable and connect that RGB cable into a RGB slot in your motherboard. And these are your SATA cables. If you buy everything correctly, your power supply should have all the power cables you need for every single component of your PC. These power SATA cables, they come with 3 female adapters, and I'll place a picture here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So you can connect multiple things there. Like I have connected my HDD drive, my RGB stuff there. Yeah, so I have like 3 things connected to one, so you don't need to use all those cables for your build. So once you have your fans, your motherboard, and everything ready to go, so I made the mistake of actually buying the regular size case. I should have actually gone ahead and bought the XL version. This is because your motherboard comes in sizes. You should check if it's a EATX or ATX and make sure your case aligns with that. Otherwise, you're gonna have this issue right here like me. You see these openings in the back? These are for your motherboard power cables to go through. So look how big my motherboard is. You don't want to make that mistake. However, it will still work. It'll just make your cable organization a little bit more messy. If you have space on the side, run your motherboard cable through there. So for my case, it comes with all these screws. So what I used was these 3.5 driver screws. These are what I used to mount my motherboard into the case. There's maybe like 12 of these holes throughout the motherboard. I probably missed 1 or 2, I'm not gonna lie. So the next thing you want to do is give power to your motherboard. This is how your motherboard cable should look like, and most people, like I said, have enough space to run it through the side. I went through the bottom. You can go through the side. It will make your cable management a lot easier. And then go to your power supply and mount it into this port right here. The next thing you're gonna want to do is install your GPU. This is also very simple. Your GPU might come with the sag holster, so your GPU doesn't sag. So I would recommend installing this. It's a bit tedious. My case was at least very tedious. There are these little tabs on the back of your PC that you're gonna need to unscrew. They're usually held by these round screws. I'll show you a picture. At least that's what my case was. Yours might be different, but it probably should be the same. And one mistake I made was take off this little cover, and I was like, why is this not going in? So make sure you take this cover off. Same thing as you install the RAM. There's this little tab on the side, and you just pop it back in. You see, mine only needed around 2 of these tabs to come off, but I had to take them all off and install on top of them to put this sag thing on there. So the next thing you want to do is power your GPU. Your GPU is powered through PCIe cables, and this is where in the power supply you need to plug in the other end of your PCIe cable. The next thing you're going to want to do is install your CPU cooler. So I went ahead and went with a liquid cooler just because the i9 chips, especially the 14th generations, get so hot. So I was recommended to get a liquid cooler, and I would recommend you to do the same. My CPU didn't come in with a cooling device, so you might want to buy that too. What you want to do before this step is take off the top lid of the PC. It's simply as just popping it out and then sliding out that filter that it comes with. And then the next thing you're going to want to do is screw in your fans. Make sure you screw these in so that the cables face the back, so you can run these cables through the back of the case. So you want to screw these in, and then you're going to need some mounting screws to mount these. There's like maybe 16 holes in here. I only use 4 to joist this on the top. You don't need that many screws. It's not going to fly to the moon. Just make sure it's sturdy, and that's all you really worry about. Before you pass these through the back, you're going to want to ensure that these stay in the pair, so the RGB and the power stay together, and make wiring the hub in the back a lot easier. Going through the back now. Similar to your case fans, your CPU cooling fans come with the RGB hub, which is as easy as installing it with double-sided tape that it comes with to the back of your case. The next thing you want to do is install the cables you pass through the back, which should be your USB cable and your RGB cable, and you just plug those into that hub, similar to my case fans. So to make it as simple as possible, in this hub, this USB cable goes to a USB port on your motherboard, and this male SATA power cable goes into a female SATA power adapter that connects into a SATA port in your power supply. And I showed that cable earlier. And the next thing you want to do is install this bracket, which is going to be used to mount in your CPU cooling display hub. You got to install this through the back of those holes. You can kind of see them in this video. And then you're going to need this little double-sided screw. So you screw that in so the back bracket stays mounted. And the next thing you're going to want to do is grab your CPU hub and this little mounting screw that goes to the other side, so you can screw in that hub to that bracket you just installed. And before you apply this, you want to make sure to apply thermal paste. My liquid cooler already had pre-applied thermal paste, so make sure you do that. Don't put that in there without thermal paste. Okay, and the last thing you want to install is your CPU display hub. And this hub has two cables, one that runs to a CPU pump fan port on your motherboard, and the other cable goes to that hub that you install in the back. And it has this little white line, so you can align those two very easily, and so that you don't install those incorrectly. The very last step of this building the PC is actually just installing your I/O cable, which include your USB 2.0, 3.0, USB-C, the power button, the reset button. So all those are your I/O cables, and it makes it so much easier if you have your motherboard schematic pulled up next to you. And I'll show you what this pin name should look like on your motherboard, and that's where you would plug in all the cables. So for your I/O cables such as power SW, reset SW, power LED minus, you should plug in all those individual pins into the designated pins on this pin called JFP1 on your motherboard. The rest of the cables such as USB 2.0, there's this slot right here in your motherboard which I shown earlier, and the newer USB ports such as 3.0 and USB-C, these will usually be on the side of your motherboard. So for my example, USB-C for mine I believe was on slot USB 6, and USB 3.0 was I believe on USB 3 on my motherboard slot. For the audio such as your mic and all that, mine was here on the side, and that's really it. Now that you have all your hardware installed, next thing you want to do is install all your softwares. And the first thing you want to do before this, go to the other computer I mentioned earlier and make sure you format this USB that's over 8 gigabytes to FAT32. It's sure to be pre-formatted that way. If not, make sure it is. The next thing you want to do on that same computer is go into the Windows website. I'll provide the link down below, and install this installer into that flash drive that you just formatted. This process should take about 15 minutes. It does take a little bit of time, so be patient. Once that's done, that's it. Go into your computer, plug in that USB flash drive, and the Windows installation process just should start loading by itself. Just select your language, whatever you need, and then for whatever reason during that installation process you run into the issue that you can't connect to the internet, which is what happened to me. I'll link down below a subreddit that tells you the commands you need to put in your keyboard, so it bypasses that step and it just lets you go into your main Windows homepage. And then once you have that installed, go back to that other computer and install the Wi-Fi driver into that flash drive again, and then come back to your PC and install that Wi-Fi driver, and now you should be able to connect to the internet. So once you got internet connected, the next thing you want to do is go into your motherboard homepage, go to their support, go to downloads and drivers, install all the BIOS settings, all the latest things, and you should have like other LAN drivers here. So make sure you install all these drivers, and make sure your other drivers are up to date, like your GPU, your Intel chip, your CPU cooler. Every component probably have a driver, so make sure all those are up to date, and you should be golden. You're ready to go. So that's really it, guys. If you have any questions, if I have missed anything, please leave a comment down below. Roast me, whatever you want to do. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay clean. No, I don't know.